All right. Well, as folks continue to join, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off this afternoon or morning for those of you on the West Coast. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lindsey Gruber. I am the president and CEO of the Taproot Foundation, and thrilled to have you with us today as a part of this important conversation, the second in our virtual series that is normally our US Pro Bono Summit, converted to a virtual gathering this year, and moving some really important conversations forward as part of our effort to make sure that organizations serving the social good get access to the pro bono support that they need to thrive and to achieve their missions. So you'll hear quite a bit more about this work and about where there are some important opportunities to have impact. But I first want to officially welcome you to be a part of this event, and also logistically let you know that you have been muted upon entry, but we will be taking advantage of the chat feature. So as folks have already begun doing, please go ahead and introduce yourself, and you can get to know who your fellow attendees are. And feel free to pose questions throughout, which we'll also make sure we're gathering and responding to as a part of our Q&A. We have what should be a really engaging and helpful dialogue this afternoon in ensuring we have the opportunity to support the organizations that really help make our society and ecosystem thrive. And ahead of getting into more of those specifics, I want to say a tremendous thank you on behalf of the Taproot Foundation to the sponsors who have thoughtfully and generously helped make sure we can keep these important parts of the pro bono movement moving forward, despite all of the changes that have happened over the course of the beginning of this year. So a big thank you to our leadership sponsors, Deloitte, Disney, and Prudential. And in particular, a thank you to our impact sponsor, Johnson & Johnson. We actually have the wonderful opportunity to have Sadia Malik from Johnson & Johnson, who's the manager of employee engagement, to be here to share a few thoughts, insights today, both as one of our longtime partners in driving forward the pro bono movement, and in particular, stemming from Johnson & Johnson's longtime thoughtful support of social enterprises and small businesses, which is obviously incredibly relevant for today's conversation. So thank you for joining us, Sadia, and I'd love to turn it over to you for a few moments. Let's see, Sadia, is your audio working again? But you might be muted. We had you working just a moment ago. Let's see if that microphone icon that appears beneath my picture might work for you. Let's see. Is the red microphone icon appearing beneath my image for you? Let's see if we're able to click on that and if that might change it again for you. I know we were successful moments ago. You know, we might be having a connection issue since I know this was just working for us previously. We will check just to make sure that your audio permissions are working, but if that doesn't work for us in another 30 seconds or so, I'll move forward with the initial portion of this conversation and have you perhaps exit and rejoin, and then we'll be able to make sure you can move forward. All right, we'll give ourselves just a moment here as we troubleshoot on the back end. I will jump ahead for just a moment with a little additional context about what the focus of today's webinar and discussion is. And momentarily, Sadia should be able to be here to provide us with some additional color and context about the importance of bringing this group together today. So with those of you joining us on the line who are already familiar with Taproot, and for those who aren't, we ourselves are a nonprofit organization, but with a focus on helping to make sure that organizations serving the social good get access to the support they need. And we obviously do that through a focus on pro bono service. And in particular, it's incredibly important for us in a time like this to be able to focus on broadening and widening the aperture to ensure that pro bono support is able to get to the organizations that need it, when and where they need it, which is why it's essential to really have this dialogue around the opportunities to be able to bring this type of support to small businesses. Obviously, over the course of the last several months, there have been an incredible number of compounding factors that have made this a particularly challenging time for small businesses. COVID-19 certainly, and then very importantly, the incredibly disproportionate impact that that has had on our communities of color, Black entrepreneurs, and so many other disproportionately underserved communities. Now more than ever, we think it's incredibly valuable to be able to harness the power that pro bono service can have in order to help support the organizations and entrepreneurs that provide such an incredible component of the ecosystem that helps our society thrive. And I can share that with that, Taproot itself over the years has had the privilege of being able to run pro bono programming, supporting a number of different types of small businesses. And going forward, we will actually be piloting opening up the Taproot Plus online platform in order to be able to provide pro bono service virtually directly to small businesses to support them where and when they need it. So we are thrilled to be able to provide more of that information and insight moving forward, and want to share this with you now in the context of our commitment and recognition to how important it is to support these types of organizations as a critical part of our organization and society. And you're going to have to be satisfied with just my words in my face, since my slides don't want to advance in this, and look forward to the opportunity to follow up and share more here. There you go. So really being able to base this both on our experience and partnering with a number of thoughtful and engaged companies in thinking about the ways that pro bono can support small businesses, and now having the opportunity to pilot opening up our platform in this way as well. So moving ahead and thinking about how we're able to take you through this afternoon ahead of being able to cede my mic over to Sadia and some important context for us as one of the critical partners in this work. We're going to be spending a little time focusing on the importance and impact of small businesses in the communities. So many folks here are already aware of and have long been supporting that work, and many have traditionally associated corporate social responsibility with nonprofit organizations. And we think this is an incredibly valuable time, as I mentioned, to really broaden the way we can look at supporting organizations that are a critical part of advancing the social good. Provide some more context and examples about what pro bono in action can look like for small businesses, and then bring that to life through some corporate profiles, which I'm really looking forward to having the chance to share with you and dig into more in that respect. So from there, we'll have a chance to talk about best practices and Q&A. And as I mentioned, please do take advantage of the chat field so we can ensure that we have the chance for questions and components going forward, and taking advantage of the chance to answer them at the end as well. So I'm just checking in with my colleagues here to make sure that I am introducing folks in the right order now that we're playing with our microphones and such. It was initially my privilege to be able to introduce Sadia and then have the chance to be able to hear from Gerard Staton. And I'm just going to verbally acknowledge with my colleagues behind the scenes if I should move that way, and then exit in order to cede my microphone. I'm really building up the suspense for Sadia. Sorry, that's a lot to live up to, Sadia. Well, here's what I'm going to do in order to move us forward and get the best out of all of our speakers in time. I am going to introduce our colleague, Gerard Staton, so that I have the opportunity and privilege to be able to do that. And I will then be ceding my microphone for Sadia to say a few words ahead of, a few thoughts ahead of being able to turn it over to Gerard. So in going through the agenda as I just laid out, I'm so pleased to be able to share that as we get into the meat and substance of this discussion, diving into this first piece will be Gerard Staton, who is the president of the Helplessness Foundation, which is an incredible nonprofit organization founded in 2015, located in Durham, North Carolina. And they really have a multifaceted approach to supporting entrepreneurship training. It's wonderful to be able to have him here today representing so many aspects of the ways that entrepreneurs can be supported by an organization, and appreciating the dimensions of pro bono support as beneficiaries and recipients in providing the support to small businesses. And in addition, he's a very talented artist himself in the context of this work. So really thrilled that in a little bit, you'll be able to hear from Gerard in particular about the trends and challenges and opportunities we see within the sector of small businesses and providing that support. So with that, I will say thank you again to everyone for joining us, and I'm looking forward to the rest of today's discussion, and I'm going to turn over my microphone so that you may hear from my colleagues.
Absolutely. All right. Hopefully, everyone can hear me fine. My name is Gerard Staton. As they said, I run the Helios Foundation here in Durham, North Carolina. And our organization does coaching and mentoring for small businesses. We concentrate on businesses that earn less than a fair living wage. And we typically do that with households instead of just small businesses. We work with folks who are justice involved, who don't have as high of an education. That was how we got started. We started realizing really quickly, however, that it is a lot of small business people out there that need help. Um, uh, we started to see that obviously, if you are well off, and you want to start a business, you might be able to talk to your mother who started her own agency, or a cousin, or just family. But there are a lot of people who start small businesses that don't have access to that. They can't afford to pay someone, and they don't have anyone to give them that free advice. And so that's one of the reasons that we started Helios, to sort of be that family member. And that is important. That's why we find pro bono work is really important as well. Small business owners tend to need more help than people who are planning to start large businesses. If you can start a large business, you have access to resources. Small business owners tend not to. So, in talking about some of that pro bono work, I wanted to really talk about why small businesses need more help. It seems like it would be an easier lift, but it can be a lot more difficult for small business owners to get their businesses up and running. And there are really two reasons for that. And I wanted to talk about those through two studies that are among my favorite. So one of them, a professor out of North Carolina A&T, Mukta Jost, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name correctly, did a monopoly study, and you will be able to find these studies everywhere. Many colleges and universities have done them. Many groups have tried them. But this is where we get to really see how privilege works. So here's how the study works. If you take 6 people and you put them in the room to start playing Monopoly, and you move 4 of them out and let 2 people start playing, and they play 20, 30 minutes. Then you bring in another 2 people, and they get to start playing with the exact same rules. So they collect their starting $200, and then they start to play. And then 30 minutes after that, the last 2 people come in and play. Obviously, the people who started last will have a very serious disadvantage. But we really found that there were a lot of things that happened with this study. You will probably not find a single study where the people who won weren't in the first 2 people. They always win. One of the other things that we see is that the winners tend to win in that order. So first place person is one of the first 2. Second place person is the other one. Third and fourth fall in their same group. And then last are the people who came into the game last. The people who come in at the beginning, surprisingly, it is the people in the middle who don't feel like they're struggling at first. They think that they can catch up. They have this belief that, all the properties haven't been bought yet, not realizing that, of course, the first group has gone around the board a number of times already. They have starter properties, and so maybe not a lot, but they're starting to move forward. And of course, the last group that comes in are frustrated from the very beginning. They know they can't catch up. They have a great deal of trouble. They lose motivation. And then, interestingly enough, the people who start the game last often find that they just want respite. And by that, in the game of Monopoly, that means going to jail. They want to go to jail, because every step, every time they roll the dice, they land on someone else's property, they have to pay out. There's nothing good really that works for them. So this is one of the things that's really important that we started to see. That could have been enough, but then we started to see this justification start to happen in the players. And so at the end of the game, you will find that the players who won, instead of recognizing, well, of course we won, we were at the beginning, they say, well, I almost lost it there, but I lucked out and I was able to get boardwalk. Or worse, they blame the people who lost on something that they did. And so it would be, yeah, I know you're trying to save your money, but if you'd only bought North Carolina Avenue. And so they tend to disregard the advantage that they had in the game. This is really important when we talk about pro bono work, because that recognition is one of the reasons that a lot of small business owners really fall behind. They didn't have any of those advantages, and we want to try to give that to them. The second study where this comes into play was done by Dr. Seligman in 1965, I believe. This learned helplessness study was done with animals, dogs, rabbits. It's an unethical study. You cannot do this study again these days. But the way the study worked is that there would be a box or a cage or a crate. And on half of it, there would be an electric shock that flows through the floor. So an animal would get one warning, a bell or a light or something like that, and the electric shock would go through, and it was the animal's job to get to the other side. And they always did, with no problem. They learned really quickly, as you would expect. The unethical part of it is that if you were to take an animal and leash them in place so that they cannot move, then of course there's nothing they can do about it. They just take the jolt. But after a while, when you do release them, when you undo the binding, you let them go, and then you redo the experiment, the animals don't move. They just take it. And even if you pick them up 2, 3, a dozen times and move them to the safe side and redo the experiment, they won't move when that electric jolt comes in. There are a lot of theories behind why that is, but that learned helplessness is a real thing, and we see it with generational poverty. We see it with folks who are in dangerous relationships. We see it with POWs, etc. When you have gotten to a place where you can take hardship, you tend to just do it. There is a lack of trust that there is any other way, and you start to believe there's no reason to try. So pro bono work has this really big aspect where we really want to try to fight that. Now, those studies seem terrible, but we find with pro bono work, there is actually solutions for them. So one, we find that with the monopoly study, the only way that the people who start at the back get to move ahead is that if people at the beginning give over their property, cut them a break, that's the only way that it works. And so if I come in last and you say, look, I know you started last, so you don't have to pay when you land on whatever, right? This gives people a better opportunity to actually catch up. The other thing that we find with learned helplessness is even though it takes a long time for the animals to realize that there is a safe way out, there is actually a point where they start to accept it again. And so it might be 24 times. The reason that this matters is because we find a lot of people that do pro bono work, they feel like all they have to do is drop a few knowledge bombs on you, and then you're good. If I tell you how to do this thing, you are going to soar. And when you don't, the person who is mentoring or helping, they get frustrated and they think that it is the entrepreneur's fault, not taking into consideration this learned helplessness that is not a few experiments, but sometimes generations long. So folks who are out there doing that pro bono work, we just have to remember to be patient, and we have to be happy that we're doing this work, that we're giving a part of our privilege away. That's incredibly important. And the why is also important. We know that starting small businesses is not only good for the individual, but it is also, frankly, good for all of us. One large corporation that hires 1,000 people, that's great. And we seem to always fight for that high-tech, high-growth company. But 100 small businesses that all hire 10 people, 200 small businesses that hire 5 people, that's better. It is the same number of jobs. They're all getting paid fair living wage, and the cross training is a lot less. We also find that people who have small businesses tend to hire like them. So if you are justice involved and you start a small business, you're more likely to hire more justice involved individuals. If you're a single parent, you understand the issues that single parents have, and you're more likely to be lenient about that. So those are some of the reasons that the pro bono world is incredibly important to me. It is really the only way that we're going to be able to get small businesses to actually be able to put up a good fight and join in and be as successful as they should be. So as we start talking about what small businesses need, and you can see pictured here 2 examples of people that have gone through our program. There are really 2 sorts of small businesses and business owners that we're talking about. You have those small businesses. So on the left, you see one of our clients and a good friend of mine. His name is Michael, and he runs Wilson Cleaning Services. Wilson Cleaning Services is maybe not going to be an international organization, and that's not what he wants. He wants to hire a few individuals. It will be a family business. He wants to hand this down to his kids. And I find that too many organizations discount him immediately because he's not going to be a high-tech, high-growth company. He, of all of us, needs the most support, or organizations like his, excuse me, because he is talking about handing this down to his family. That is how we get that leg up. On the other hand, you have Morgan Siegel, who has opened a Jetta's Tea Room. And Jetta's Tea is already very big here in Durham, but she's also distributing canned teas, and that is starting to grow nationwide. She will still be a small business, though she is going to hire a lot more individuals. And sure, we all hope we can get to that person, but it is surprising how few businesses, or how many businesses, really just want to be those small organizations like Michael's, particularly when they have learned helplessness as a factor. They don't think that they can start a larger business. And so what we hope is a small business like this really builds them up a little bit more. So just kind of to wrap up, things that small businesses are looking for, primarily here in Durham, one of the things that we see is we're talking short-term and medium-term, especially while all these things are going on now. So small businesses, they need capital. They need capital relatively quickly. Hopefully they're doing gift cards, they're doing a lot of pre-sales and things like that. If they are, support them, because capital really does matter. Smaller offerings. If this is something, if you're helping a small business, just note that maybe they've always sold, I don't know, making things up. Maybe they've always sold boats, right? Everyone's not buying boats these days, but if they could sell boat parts, then they can still do business. And so whether you're having services or an actual product, if you can do a smaller version of that, that will also help. Small businesses need volunteers. We don't think about volunteering in a small business often, but they need help with finances and marketing and things like that. Small business owners are wearing all of the hats. And so as much help as we can give them, the better. And then finally getting them to some virtual operations, if at all possible, primarily if they're doing any sort of education. If they're not, I have seen small businesses that have pivoted from one person who does plumbing now has actually an online thing where he is teaching people to do their own plumbing and is actually doing really well. So something to consider. And then lastly, some of the medium-term things, we're trying to get people to do more online sales. So if you're going to be shopping, just because you can go buy something from California, buy something from one of your local small businesses instead online. We're wanting to get our small businesses to limit the amount of overhead, because we have seen that the small businesses that are dealing with COVID right now, a lot of them are doing fine because they don't have office space. They're not storing things in warehouses. And so it is the folks that have a lot of overhead that are struggling the most. So limiting overhead will help. And then the big place that we can help is exposure to outside networks. All of the small businesses that come through us, many of them started thinking that they were just going to serve their neighborhood. But the moment they could expand past that, the better. And then we all have access to resources that we can share with them. So be willing. Don't assume that they have it. If you've got a great accountant, hook them up with a small business owner that you know. You're only going to make their businesses stronger. So that ends my talk. I am really excited about pro bono work. Obviously, we could go for hours talking about it, and I know we'll have time for questions here in a little bit. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Great. Gerard, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that. Those examples were incredible, and it's really great to hear what you're seeing from your clients. My name is Alex MacArthur. I'm a director with the Taproot Foundation, and at Taproot, we know that pro bono can't meet every need that you outlined, such as that immediate access to capital, but we also know that pro bono is an incredible way to support many of those short, medium, and even some of the long-term businesses' needs. And so this pro bono, we think, can be provided in a variety of ways, or what we would call models, depending on the type of impact a company or individual wants to have. So to get you all thinking about the ways that your company or organization can run a pro bono program for small businesses, we're really excited to share a few examples of how companies have done this successfully, and then we'll share some of the best practices for how to effectively build the capacity of small businesses. So we have 3 examples of how Taproot's corporate partners have brought a pro bono program to life. And this first case study highlights a long-term pro bono program that Prudential has run with Newark area small businesses since 2018. Prudential has invested in their home, Newark, New Jersey, for more than 140 years. Pro bono is now a part of that investment. And Prudential started to work with Taproot to build on the success of some of the smaller engagements that they had run and develop their pro bono consulting program, which they call Pro Bono. And the Pro Bono small business consulting makes pro bono resources available to entrepreneurs and small businesses in Newark and the surrounding area. The focus is really on early stage and small business entrepreneurs with revenues under about $250,000 a year. So their strategy was really to meet those kind of most in need of technical assistance so that the organizations can achieve longer term sustainability and self-sufficiency. I want to note that one of the special aspects of the program is how Prudential and Taproot have worked with other partners to build out the small businesses and reach those beneficiaries. Rising Tide Capital has been the referral partner. They're a nonprofit, like Helios Foundation, that provides business development services, but for New Jersey-based entrepreneurs, and that includes training, coaching, workshops, and access to capital. Partnering with this program is another way that Rising Tide has been able to help their small businesses build stronger collaborations with each other and with anchor institutions like Prudential. So to share just a little bit about the support that Prudential provides, given that this is a long-term program, they really look at areas like strategy and business development, operations, financial management, and oftentimes those areas blend together a little bit because they're more in the startup phase for the business as well. And so we think that Pro Bono, small business consulting, is a really great example of how a company built a program to meet its social impact objectives. And in Prudential's case, that was really a commitment to inclusive economic growth, sort of like some of the areas that Gerard mentioned, really making sure that the community is growing and really supporting the city of Newark. So I'm excited to share our next case study, which is a one-day program. And this is the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Coaching Session. Goldman Sachs has made an incredible commitment to the small business community through their 10,000 Small Businesses program. And you'll hear more about that shortly. But the coaching session was designed to provide additional support to alumni of this program through a one-day event. And since 2016, a coaching session has been held yearly in New York and in London. Small businesses join teams of employees on site for a day of consulting. The businesses come to the day with a challenge and leave with a concrete deliverable to meet a short or almost medium-term need, such as developing a new financial model, creating new HR policies, or determining parameters for expansion. And I'll note that this program is really unique for a variety of reasons. First, the collaboration between Goldman Sachs and Bloomberg LP. Employees from each company are placed together on teams based on their skill sets. They're then matched with a small business owner who has a discrete need in that area of expertise. And this cross-company collaboration allows for employees to network and learn from each other's working styles. It also allows the program to address a variety of small business challenges. So for example, we've seen Goldman Sachs strategists work with Bloomberg LP sales experts to provide a really holistic business development strategy focused on online sales for a small business owner. Both Bloomberg and Goldman have really industry-specific expertise and complementary skills. So it's really incredible to see this come to life. The day also includes unique educational events and networking opportunities for the small businesses, and includes panels and exposure to senior leadership from each company. Lastly, I'll just note that the impact of the day is really more than just a one-day session. We see that 6 months after the coaching session, nearly every small business participant reports a higher revenue, increased cost savings, or increased ability to hire. So we have one additional example for you all, which is also from Goldman Sachs. When the COVID-19 crisis began, Goldman sought to provide really immediate support to its network of alumni of the 10,000 Small Businesses program. And not only did they begin providing webinars about COVID response or PPP loans, they also compiled resources for their alumni. But because of the coaching session, they knew that their employees were really well suited to provide additional resources, timely inspiration, and advice. So I'm really excited to pass it to Ann Weldy, who's Vice President of the Office of Corporate Engagement, to share more about the program that they built. And Ann oversees support for the 10,000 Small Businesses alumni nationally, and we're really thrilled to have her here today to talk about the emergency coaching program. Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Alex, for that introduction. Thank you, Lindsey, and thank you to Taproot for having me here today. It is a privilege to get to work on the 10,000 Small Businesses program, and a privilege to get to speak about it with all of you. So just zooming out a little bit for those who might not be familiar, 10,000 Small Businesses is one of two signature programs of the Goldman Sachs Foundation. And we work with existing small business owners from all 50 states across the United States, as well as in the UK, to provide these entrepreneurs with a business and management education that is really designed to help them fill in the gaps in whatever knowledge they might have and grow, recognizing that often bakers start a bakery because they've got a great brownie recipe, not because they're excellent at running a business. And so really trying to bridge that gap. In that spirit, a couple of the criteria that we are assessing when business owners are applying to the program speak to that, exactly the spirit of a business owner being in operations and having a track record. And so we ask that the business owner be the owner or co-owner, and so in a position to make decisions and pivot the business as needed, in operations for 2 or more years, so that there's a meaningful track record of financial statements to reflect back on and see what story that's telling. Revenues above $100,000 and more than 2 employees, in the sense that we wouldn't want anyone kind of closing up shop to be in the classroom, and then a desire to grow and create jobs in their communities. We're really proud that 10,000 Small Businesses works and continues to work. We've got a 98.5% graduation rate. We've got also within 6 months of completing the program, we see that 67% of our program participants are increasing their revenues, and about half are creating net new jobs. And then just to kind of, I think, lay the context for the emergency coaching program, we, about 3 months ago, of course, recognized rapidly that business owners were in dire straits and in a very different position than they've probably ever been in before. At that time, we had about 500 business owners actively taking 10,000 Small Businesses in the classroom environment, when the classroom environment basically ceased to exist. And so we set about rapidly pivoting our curriculum so that it could be delivered virtually, and so that there could be continuity in their experience, so they could hopefully take the learnings of the program and put them into steadying their business, if not, of course, growing their businesses. Secondly, we mobilized a whole suite of trainings and webinars to equip business owners with both acute and longer term needs and questions. So accessing PPP funding, understanding what the CARES Act means for them, but also things like negotiation, recognizing that landlord-tenant negotiations would likely be coming down the pike. And then really the last thing that has been a privilege to work on, in particular in coordination with Taproot, has been mobilizing resources around mentoring and coaching. And so we have partnered with Taproot and our national partners at Babson College to pair Goldman Sachs employees with small business owners around acute business needs. And this was a really fun opportunity to quickly move Goldman Sachs knowledge into business owners who are seeking targeted guidance, and really adapt what had been our longer term coaching program and think about it in a more acute targeted intervention. So pleased to share that to date, we've had 121 successful coaching calls between Goldman Sachs employees and 10,000 small businesses graduates, and also really pleased to see that it's been well received on both sides. So it was both a good use of the business owner's time during what is a tremendously difficult time, where time is of even more of premium than it typically is, and also that our employee population were able to volunteer and think and recognize that their skills were being utilized in a way that was additive, and also a little bit outside the box from how they typically spend their day. And then because we love a Net Promoter Score, pleased to see that it was similarly well regarded and would be recommended to peers on both sides, both within small business owners and within our volunteers' peers. And then really, I mean, I think we're sharing some feedback here for if you can kind of peruse, but I would say that I think there are really three key themes that emerged from the experience that were really powerful, and I think a strong endorsement of this targeted intervention. So one, an opportunity for business owners to tap into talent, as Gerard was noting, might not be kind of readily within their wheelhouse or within their network. And so being able to have somebody on the other end of the phone that they wouldn't necessarily have otherwise been in dialogue with. An opportunity on the employee side for our employees to leverage their skills and knowledge in a way that they don't typically get to do in their day job. And then I think finally, it was an opportunity for both sides, both our employee population and their small business population, to think outside the box, and to be presented with ideas that might not necessarily be, kind of their typical headspace. So just to recap, I think a couple of keys to success on this endeavor. One, that we're able to move quickly and mobilize this during a period of acute crisis for small business owners. Two, that with Taproot's constant partnership and guidance, really encourage that this drive towards actionable recommendations. So something that a business owner could walk away feeling really equipped with following that call, and understand the path forward. And then finally, really, as we pivoted to a virtual environment, really delegating a lot of this process to the employees so that they felt ownership over taking the initiative to reach out to the business owner, to follow up with the business owner, and to really kind of own the process, and feel a lot of pride in doing so. So that is a little bit about the emergency coaching program, and thank you again to Taproot for really making it possible.
Thank you so much, Anne. It's great to hear that feedback, and just really fantastic to know how the firm was able to move so quickly to meet these timely needs. So we're really excited now to talk a bit about the best practices. So if you're going to choose to provide small businesses with pro bono, how do you do it and make sure it's a success? So we've mentioned a few of these so far, but we really want to note first and foremost, you want to think about the who. Right? Who do you want to engage in your pro bono? There are many factors that go into this. Factors of size and stage are especially important. But before we dive into those factors, I think it's important to call out that you can also think about the diversity of your beneficiaries. And some companies that we're working with are choosing to intentionally focus on Black and Brown owned businesses, businesses owned by women, as well as they build up their small business pro bono offerings. If we look at tackling the small business stage, depending on your company's social impact and business objectives, you may want to think about engaging small businesses that are just at that startup phase, like Prudential did. There are many small businesses, as we know, that really fail during this time, But on the flip side, there's also an opportunity to really build their capacity when they're early stage like this. And we've seen example after example where pro bono support in areas like business development, strategy, marketing, outreach during these times can really help small businesses that are just starting really get unstuck and think outside the box. You might also want to think about targeting small businesses that are more at the growth or expansion phases. And this is more of the businesses that Anne's been talking about within the 10,000 Small Businesses program. They're really needing capacity building needs in areas like HR, marketing, technology, strategy, or maybe financial management as well, where they're really scaling up. In terms of business size, the size of business you're supporting often aligns with that stage of business, where they are in startup or management or expansion phase. So you really want to think about that size. You might be looking to support established businesses that have multiple employees, or who may be really have a really growing staff size as well. And they're going to have some growing pains that could be supported through pro bono. Lastly, I want to note that if you're supporting individual entrepreneurs, there might be individual other considerations that you want to think about in providing them pro bono. For example, for a necessity-based entrepreneur, someone that Gerard was talking about, may be a conscious choice to really support them through effective pro bono, more for some leadership or some coaching. They may need more of the business management on the personal side as well. This brings me to our next best practice, which is really thinking about the what. What are you providing to this entrepreneur or to this larger small business? So what challenges, what needs, what opportunities are your employees best equipped to address through small business pro bono? Figuring out what challenges you're capable and your employees are capable to address will help you to shape your ideal pro bono program. So first, one of the obvious factors here is time. How much time do your employees have to give, whether it's an hour or two, a half day, or even a long-term program like we've discussed. Shorter-term support might look more like diagnostic support, like the emergency coaching program that Anne mentioned, giving that really timely and time-bound advice. On the other hand, if your employees have more time to dedicate, maybe 3 to 5 hours a week over the course of a few months, they can really spend that time tackling actual deliverables and sets of recommendations as well, which can be really valuable for a small business. So I also want to note that besides time, there's also an element here that makes pro bono for small businesses really unique. That there's often a close tie between what employee participants do every day, their day job, and what they can provide a small business through pro bono support. So you want to think about where that overlap of needs are, like Gerard mentioned, and then also where your subject matter expertise is with your employees. So we've seen some incredible programs where small businesses in a specific industry can be paired with employees with deep knowledge of that industry. I'll give an example here where a restaurant owner might come with a challenge, and they might be paired with employees that are focused on the food and beverage industry. Or a social enterprise from that's really building out an earned income strategy with a feminine hygiene product. We've seen them paired with a healthcare organization who has significant experience with feminine hygiene product sales. Pretty incredible to see that match, and the small business being able to really leverage that unique expertise of a company. So it's really important as we wrap this piece up to remember that one of the unique aspects about the challenges that you can tackle with small businesses and entrepreneurs is that there's often that close tie between what your employees do every day and how that translates into addressing a small business's challenge and opportunity. Our final best practice here is to think about the how. How is pro bono for small businesses being delivered and executed, and what makes program design and execution different from programming with pro bono for nonprofits, for example? Through the work that Taproot has done with small businesses over the past few years, we've recognized a few important small differences. So The first is thinking about well-rounded teams. So if you're working with an entrepreneur or a founder, they may oversee multiple departments within their business. And so the challenge that they might be coming to you with they want to be solved through pro bono may really blend between a few different functional areas for them, right? They might come to you with a financial modeling challenge, but it actually is also a bit of a strategic and scenario planning challenge. So they're thinking about some sales aspects that might impact their finances. So really thinking about how to provide a well-rounded team for them that can really the next level as well. There's also an element here of thinking about the small business owners or entrepreneurs' personal investment in capacity building. And so you want to really make sure you set really strong expectations for them. This can be sort of a double-edged sword, right? An entrepreneur is often very personally invested in their business. And so that means that they're some of the most eager pro bono recipients, which is fantastic. But it also means that the stake that they have in the success of their business could mean that they might really push scope for the project, or they might ask a lot of the team that might be working with them as well. So really thinking about what the training is that you're providing, setting some of those boundaries as well, so that you can really support both the entrepreneur and the team being very successful about what the outcome of the program is. The final piece I'll add is that you may want to consider wraparound resources. We've seen Goldman Sachs do this really incredibly well. One of the silver linings of the difficult realities of our country right now related to COVID or racial injustice is that the private sector is really stepping up to the plate and taking a multi-pronged approach to supporting small businesses in our communities. Pro bono support to move the needle is fantastic, and obviously we're big proponents of that, but it's only one step and part of the solution. And so some of the resources we've seen companies provide, in addition to capacity building, includes access to capital, first and foremost, but also resources like being able to provide their executives for some mentoring or coaching. It can look like networking opportunities for small businesses in a particular sector or building business relationships between them. It can also look like navigating and supporting businesses in navigating complex policy landscapes, such as PPP. So you can really think about the ways that your company can support small businesses, both as a vendor, as through pro bono, and then also in some of these other ways. So with these best practices in mind, I'll close by saying that we know that there are some important differences between engaging small businesses or nonprofits in pro bono. Hopefully this session has helped clarify some of those pieces, giving you some good examples for how you might want to support small businesses to address their capacity building challenges and opportunities. So with that, I want to see if we have a few questions, and then we do have Sadia on the line, so we should be able to open it up there. But just to get us started real quickly, one piece that came in through the chat box, and I think is a great question to start with, is how to really best identify the small business partners to support, and how do you know if they're ready for pro bono? So I'm going to turn it to Gerard first to talk a little bit about that pro bono readiness piece, and then Anne to talk about how to identify some small business partners to support. Gerard, do you want to take that first piece?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question, and one that we had struggled with when we first started as well. One of the things that we found is that a lot of small businesses are actually ready dependent upon who the person that's doing the pro bono work is. We always say that if you are on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a 3, you can teach 1s and 2s. And sometimes we find that if you're too far beyond where a person is, that can actually be detrimental. If you're a 10, teaching someone who's a 1 or 2 might be over intimidating. So a lot of that is going to depend very heavily on the person that is doing the pro bono work itself. The other place where we had drawn a line, and now we're even considering moving that actually, is that as long as anyone is trying at all with any seriousness, then they can use help. We find that entrepreneurship can, in fact, be really fragile, particularly people who are coming from a lower income and who do not have the actual support of people around them. And so if I'm trying to put a business together and I hit the first few snags and I can't get by that, I may never try again. So if you're at a place to help anyone who is actually trying, I think that they are ready as long as you can work with that person. If you find that they're just not far enough for you, then maybe you can use your network and find someone that is a little closer to them that can help them out.
Great. Thank you so much, Gerard. And how about sourcing small businesses? How do you find some of those folks that are at that level and ready to go?
Yeah. Well, I could not agree more with Gerard's point. I mean, I think there is huge value in making sure that the kind of terms of engagement work for everybody, that the that expectations are set up front. And so in the case of the emergency coaching program, we knew that Goldman has certain expertise and it certainly doesn't have other expertise. And so we made sure that we were establishing parameters for pro bono support that we could meaningfully provide. And then that we were seeking from our 10,000 small businesses community, graduates of our program who had need in that area. Because the emergency coaching program was such a kind of acute response, we were able to really open it up. And so it was really first come, first serve. We asked business owners in our community to apply, to articulate their challenge and their need. And then in collaboration with Taproot, we set to work trying to find the perfect match for everybody. In the context of some of our other pro bono engagement, there's a bit of a lengthier application process, and that's largely a product of just the amount of time and the depth at which the pro bono support is provided. But ultimately, it's really just letting the need and the talent drive the opportunity.
Great, thanks, Anne. And then we've had one question that's following up on, once there has been a pro bono intervention, how do you measure it? And I know that's something that we've talked about a lot in terms of what does success look like, or what are you looking at across your pro bono programs? Are there metrics that you're trying to work towards?
Yeah. We are definitely a hugely metric-driven program, like everybody is these days. I think when it comes to our pro bono support, and particularly with the coaching programs that we've done in partnership with Bloomberg over the last several years, I think a key and very tangible metric of that success is that every business owner walks away with a deliverable that they feel is immediately actionable and can be put right into their business, whether or not that's a marketing plan or an updated financial statement or a new sales strategy as they bring a product to market. And so that's one. We regularly survey the community that participates. So both the volunteers from Goldman and Bloomberg and the small business owners that we're working with, so that we're refining and understanding what's working. And then really in the context of this emergency coaching program that we kind of spun up in the last few months, I think it was a pilot and it was an innovation. And so the metrics of success really manifested as, have we made a match that will allow somebody to feel like they're on a bit more stable ground? And again, deriving that through surveying and really understanding what those calls were like and what that experience was like, which was fortunately borne out, both in kind of the Net Promoter Score as well as those who found it a valuable use of their time.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. And we've seen with some of our programs with small businesses, you can measure both and look at what the intervention has done for the entrepreneur in terms of either their revenue or cost savings or increased staff. But ideally, you're also looking at the community level, like we talked about a little bit with Prudential, and looking at, how does then generational wealth, right, be built through the entrepreneur, and how are they really a catalyst, ideally, for economic growth within a certain area too, which is such a powerful piece of working with small businesses. So with that, I want to thank our speakers, Gerard Staton and Anne Weldy. And I do want to pass it over to Sadia Malik from Johnson & Johnson to wrap us up. Sadia?
Great. Can you hear me?
We can.
Excellent.
Fantastic, Sadia.
Thank you. Apologies for the technical issues. If for some reason you guys were unable to hear me, but this is quite an entrance. We did not intend for this, but thank you for the opportunity to be able to sponsor this summit. We are really excited and honored to do so. As many of you know, Johnson & Johnson is a healthcare company, and our aspiration is really to change the trajectory of health for humanity. This includes making an impact impact in patients and the consumers that buy our products. But not only that, it's really about the communities that we live in and support. So as many of you may know that we are grounded by our value system, which is our credo. This is really helps us, there's a big aspect of community within our credo, and this is really in the culture of J&J, and really helps to define how we operate as a business. So there's two examples that I wanted to share with all of you today of how Johnson & Johnson really supports small businesses and communities. One is through our Johnson & Johnson procurement division. There's a metric and a goal year over year of how we spend with small businesses. As you can imagine, a company our size has great buying power, and so we feel it is our obligation and our duty to be spending with small businesses and diverse businesses. And so this support of supplier diversity and inclusion it's across the global supply chain, and it upholds our values, but it also helps to drive business results. The second example, which is very relevant to the conference today and the summit today, which is a program that is around pro bono and small businesses. It's called Vital Voices 100, and it's in partnership with Vital Voices and Taproot Foundation. Essentially, J&J employees are matched up with small women-owned businesses around the world, and it gives them a unique opportunity to support these women leaders in small businesses to build stronger and more effective organizations and improve capacity as leaders. And so as we aspire to change the trajectory of health for humanity, diversity and inclusion from supply chain to our pro bono capacity building programs is not only good for society, it is vital for our business, and it's important for innovation and to get different perspectives. So really excited to hear from all of you. This was really beneficial. I look forward to more dialogue like this and conversations, and thanking Taproot for putting this together because it's very timely. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Shadia. Thank you for our sponsorship. We also thank our leadership sponsors, Deloitte, Disney, and Prudential. We're at the top of the hour. We will let you all go. Thank you for this conversation, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please feel free to reach out at advisory@taprootfoundation.org if you have additional questions about pro bono for small businesses or pro bono in general, or Taproot Plus for small businesses. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to hearing about your work in your communities. Have a great afternoon.